All right. Thanks for those of you who have joined us at the top of the hour. We're just going to wait a few seconds to let the others in from the waiting room. All right. Looks like I think I'll just go ahead and get this started. Well, good morning. I'm so glad that you have joined us today. I'm excited for today's topic, and I'm sure you are as well, which is why you joined us. So my name is Peppley, and I am a college and career counselor at a public high school in Meridian, Idaho, and I'm one half of PNACAC's professional development team. The better half is Brittany. Brittany's here today, and she's going to wave to you. Brittany is with the University of Montana, and we put on this monthly series. If you've joined us before, you kind of understand how this all works. But we have a great topic today. I was talking to the presenters off screen or offline that this is just one that I've had a lot of questions about as I work with my students who are applying to top tier choice schools and how the wait list and deferments and everything works. So I'm excited about today's topic. So in case you don't know what today's topic is, let me just remind all of us, we're here for, the topic is wait list, defers and holds, what to do and what to avoid. So for me, it's the avoid part that I need to figure out if I'm doing things, advising incorrectly with my students. But our presenters today are Allie from Allie from Willamette University and Yvonne from University of Washington. They told me I could just use first names, so they're kind of a big deal. They go by their first names, but they're going to give you a little bit more information about themselves and their background, just so you know where this wealth of information is coming from. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items. Please remember to keep yourself muted. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat. I'll be helping to monitor the chat and the slides. But with the chat, if you could wait maybe for your question until they get through most of the presentation, because your question might be something that they'll answer. But we'll try to be done at least at a quarter till to the top of the hour to answer the questions. And if we're done a little bit earlier, we'll just dig right into the questions. So, and just a quick reminder that this is being recorded. So if you have any coworkers who are wondering how they can see this later, this is recorded. And if your coworkers or you even need to step away and you're wondering if you could see the rest of it, you bet. We should have that out by tomorrow. Martha, almost forgot the cherry on top is Martha, who is our IT support with PNACAC, and she is the one that helps us kind of run these webinars, and she is the one that sends out the emails. Not sends out the emails, but she helps us get this started. And a quick little giggle, we did realize later that something happened, I think, with our merge, and you were all called Alicia in your email. So sorry about that, everybody. We're all Alicias today. So, or Brittany likes to go by Felicia, but the rest of us, we're all Alicia today. So sorry about that. Anyways, okay, I'll stop talking. I'm going to turn it over to our awesome presenters, and can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ray and Brittany, for having us. My name is Allie Kvidera. I serve as the Director of Recruitment at Willamette University in Salem, Oregon. And we are experiencing a snow day today. Anyone else getting snow where they're at? So I apologize in advance if a cute little 4-year-old ends up barging into this because he is downstairs currently being quiet. But I'm excited to talk about this topic, waitlist, defers, and holds. And we have a couple bonus topics that we're going to put in here. So we're going to talk about the concept of spring admits as well as appeals. So we thought that went well with all of this. I currently work at Willamette University, as I had mentioned. I have worked at a few other colleges though, and so I think that's helpful in context to know that some of the stuff that both Yvonne and I are going to be talking about come from other institutions that we've worked with and examples from there. So I've worked at Willamette. Prior to working at Willamette, I worked for TCU, Texas Christian University's Office of Admission, and then prior to that, I worked at Oregon State University in their admissions office. So I'm going into my 16th year in the professional college admissions. Yvonne, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Allie. Allie and I have worked together for many, many years because I used to be on the other side of the desk. So, good morning, everyone. I'm Yvonne Chiu, and I'm the Assistant Director for Freshman Recruitment for the University of Washington, Seattle campus. Um, Prior to this, I've also worked as an Assistant Director at the University of Southern California in LA. And then before that, I was a secondary school counselor, both public and private schools. So I am very excited that many of you have found a little like quiet time in your office in between students dropping by and joining us to learn more about this, because I know we're heading into this season now where lots of students, a lot more of the students will get decisions, and some of them will be happy and thrilled, and you'll celebrate with them, and then others will be in tears. I used to go through multiple tissue boxes during this month. And, students are really, really, I get it, very worried, very anxious, and they can get very, very upset based on what they hear. So hopefully, Allie and I will give you some good information, some tools to guide you all through this period. Okay, I think we have a deck, and I was in the process of asking Ray in the chat to launch it, but so that we can get started on the topics. I think I hope what you walk away with today is just knowing that none of these decisions are very personal. I think you all know that, but convincing your students of this is really, really challenging. Um, why was this person not given a definitive answer and another person was? I think those are natural questions students and families are going to have, and you probably as well, because you can see more of the data, right? You probably are comparing transcripts of two students and trying to figure out like what happened here. None of this is personal. All of these tools that we're going to talk about, and I use tools very intentionally, is really because it's for the college and the university. They serve the college and the university first and foremost. They are to help us control the flow of students and make sure we meet our numbers so the budget supports what the institution has planned for the next fiscal year. So if you can hold that in your head, just realize that a lot of this has nothing to do with the merits of one student over another. And it's to fulfill institutional needs. Okay. I think Ray's saying something.
I'm trying to get it to load. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I just asked Martha or Brittany to see if they could help me.
I think that
I should have practiced this since I'm at home. I'm on a different computer. Sorry, everybody.
The format we're going to go in today is we're going to first kind of start off talking about waitlists, because I know that's kind of that's the big one that people want to know more about, how to navigate. Then we'll go into talking about deferred and talk about holds. And then we're going to go in and talk about this process of spring admit and then appeals. So if you're kind of curious the sequence, that's what we're going to be doing. And really, the reason we find this topic to be helpful is because if you've never worked on the college side before, or maybe you have, but you haven't worked in an office that uses all of those admission decision terms, then it can feel really like secretive. Like, why are they doing this? What's the secret sauce to get my student in? And so hopefully you can go away with, as Yvonne said, some of these tools to feel like you can navigate these conversations better with the students you're working with. But really the biggest thing about all of these is that when you get a decision, whether it's a wait list, a defer, a hold, really it's not a concrete decision, right? It can be hard because it's not a yes or no. It's like an in limbo decision. So we find that these tools will actually kind of help you navigate those conversations and also equip you with like, okay, that's the reason why this school might be doing it, or that's the reason why this school is doing it. And I love that Yvonne says it's not personal. it can be really hard for us to make these decisions, but also it is a enrollment tool that colleges use, as well as, you know, one of the things I always hate to bring up, but colleges, as much as they are, you know, schools and institutions of higher learning, like there is a business side to a college that's often not talked about. And so I think you also have to think of it in that standpoint of colleges can't over-enroll. They're also trying not to under-enroll. They're trying to make the leadership of their universities very happy. And so that's why these tools are necessary in many colleges, but not all. So we're going to kick it off with Waitlist with Yvonne.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. So Waitlists, I think most of you are most familiar with. After the college evaluates the applications, they make their offers known. Most of the students will get, an offer or they will not be offered or denied. But then there is that group of students who are not given a decision and are instead asked to join a wait list. And at most institutions I've worked with, it's an active opt-in process. It's not an automatic, and I think that's something that counselors need to be aware of. If students are offered a wait list, then they need to actually do something. Click a button, fill out a form, but log back into their portal, say, yes, I will take a spot on the wait list. At most institutions, that's all you have to do is just say, I will take a spot on the wait list. The other thing that a lot of students who get on the wait list try to do then after is like, oh, do I send you more things? Do I send you, do I send a letter? Do I update my resume? Do I update my activities? So I've worked at institutions where, they do different things. The University of Southern California usually will, take in more information, but I think at this point, sorry, it's been a few years. They have already received a mid-year report. So that seventh semester, senior year grades may be taken into consideration, and maybe we might even get a final high school transcript for some of those students, and then they might utilize that additional information. On the complete opposite side of that, at the University of Washington, we do not take in any more information. You opt into the wait list, and we just go off of the original application. And I know some of you may wonder, that seems strange. Well, now you have senior year grades. Don't you want to take that into consideration? But no, we want to re-review the pool that we've already went through, and then utilize that initial information. I think part of that is just equity. We just want to make sure that these students are like someone who's more savvy or who has more resources at a high school doesn't always necessarily get that edge over a student from a less resourced school. Also, these students, I think all know but should bear in mind is they're on the wait list because we did love them, because by a lot of metrics, they were highly qualified and we see a lot of potential and they are very capable of coming to our institution and doing well. And we simply just didn't have enough room. And that concept of room is something I like us to kind of hold space for, because a lot of parents and students think like, well, if they offer 50 admission seats, then they assume like all of them will always be taken up immediately by the person we offer to. And that's just not the case. For every 2 students in Washington we might offer to, only 1 will accept that. And then out of Washington, for every, I want to say maybe 4, I would say about 3 or 4 students we offer to, 1 will accept. So a lot of people are going to turn us down, and that's the point of the wait list. So as people turn us down, we hope to get those students we loved in our first review an opportunity to then maybe come to the University of Washington if they're still inclined and interested. As a secondary school counselor, I always would counsel students to like move on. Don't count on the wait list. It's not a guarantee. It's like it's a bonus surprise, a happy maybe consideration you can make later on down the road. But for most students, I would say, look at the offers you've gotten, seriously consider those. If you've fallen in love with one, great, just move on, accept that school, don't opt into the wait list and just keep moving on. And I still think that's the best advice because at the University of Washington, we have offered like thousands of students a spot on the wait list. And during some years, maybe we will remove as few as 10 students off the wait list, and then sometimes thousands of students. So it's a gamble. It's like, it's not, again, it's a good tool for the college because we can fill in the class with our waitlist offers as we need to in the different areas of our college. And maybe this is a good spot for Allie to also jump in if she has more to add. But um, that's essentially what a waitlist is. We look at where we have smaller numbers, and then we try to fill in the class with those. And a lot of times people wonder, well, what criteria are you using? And again, it's going off the initial evaluation of whether they were reviewed highly and if they were, then great, they're in the waitlist pool if they opted in. And then we start looking at things like residency for us at the University of Washington. Do we need more Washington students? Do we need more out of Washington state students? And then sometimes we do have departments and programs that come to us and say, you know what? We got funding that we weren't expecting. We can actually serve more students. Please let in a few more. And then that way we can sometimes utilize their major choice to also help build a class. Allie, do you have anything to add from your?
I have things to add. Definitely. So currently when I work at Willamette, we don't utilize a wait list. They have in the past, but not since I've been at Willamette. So my experience with wait lists comes from my time at Texas Christian University. And waitlist was used pretty prevalent there, just like at the institutions Yvonne has worked at. What I always found interesting about the waitlist there is that, like Yvonne said, it could vary by year, right? Like the number of students on the waitlist. Some years it would be robust because we had more applications than we were expecting. I mean, when your football team's doing well, those applications come in. And then there'd be years where we'd have a little bit of dip in applications, and so we wouldn't have to wait list as much. But the biggest question I remember always asked was, what is my spot on the wait list? Yvonne, I don't know if you get asked that, but the spot thing, and it always threw me off because I'm like, what colleges are actually like numerically numbering these kids on a wait list? I'm not familiar with a lot of colleges doing that. There's not actually a ranking or a spot. It is kind of to fill in gaps, like Yvonne said. So we would fill in gaps. So typically, if I had a nursing student who was on the wait list, probably wasn't going to get off the wait list because that was going to be a program, the direct entry program, that it was just going to fill up. Same with business. But then there were other programs where it was like, okay, if we could go to the wait list, yeah, maybe that student who is interested in anthropology or that student who is interested in physics, there would be an opportunity to admit them off. And so we were using it to shape and balance our class. And so oftentimes it would come down to major. Sometimes the in-state, out-of-state thing wasn't a thing for us, being a private school. It didn't really matter. Now, if you wanted to say that you had all 50 states and there was someone from Wyoming on the wait list and you didn't have anyone from Wyoming, then maybe that would help them. Sometimes it would come into, okay, well, our marching band is really small and they can't even fill TCU spelled out on the football field. It looks small. And so we need to go and pull more kids who want to be in band. So sometimes it wasn't even an academic program. It could be something involvement-wise that we needed to fill in a gap for. And one thing I appreciated about our waitlist at TCU was that I did get a say in who could get off of the waitlist if we went to the waitlist as an admission counselor. And usually what we utilized then, if it went beyond like, oh, we can only admit from these programs, was, okay, admission staff, who are some of your favorites? Who are those students that you've met that you just know they would be such a great community member? Maybe it's someone who has shown a lot of demonstrated interest, and we would keep track of those things. So oftentimes when I was giving students names that I wanted off the wait list, it was because I had a lot of contact with them and I knew the likelihood of them saying yes and enrolling at TCU was really, really high. Because when you're taking a student off the wait list, you are essentially admitting them, which is increasing your acceptance rate. So it's smarter for colleges to, if they're paying attention to their acceptance rate, to admit students who they think will actually enroll. The other thing that I always remember getting asked about the wait list at TCU was, can I get financial aid if I'm coming off the wait list? And I'm sure Yvonne could probably touch on this after I touch on it. And I would say, yeah, you can get need-based financial aid if you qualified for it. But in terms of merit aid, that wasn't going to happen because at that point, we didn't give every student a merit scholarship. We gave our most high achieving students a scholarship. So if you're coming off of the wait list, then you're kind of one of those last ones being admitted. And so there won't be merit scholarships for you. However, we were really transparent about this. So even when we put a student on the wait list, we would have an FAQ that we sent to the student. And it was clear, it did say that. And so hopefully there weren't any surprises when they did get admitted and realized that, they weren't getting any additional aid than what maybe they qualified for need-based from the FAFSA.
Yeah, I think Allie made a really great point. Some institutions become very need aware and need sensitive with the wait list. And that is a factor they might look at. Students who are not requesting any financial aid may be prioritized in a wait list for certain institutions. So I experienced that as a secondary school counselor. I even had one very elite private college on the East Coast, like call my student and just said, hey, if you remove your financial aid box, like if you uncheck that box, then we might let you off the wait list. Like essentially telling them that if they did, it was going to happen. So just something to be aware of.
Yeah. Yvonne, how important is it for you to have students accept their spot on the wait list? What happens if they don't say yes or respond to the call of action that you guys ask of?
You mean like then do we still consider them? No. Yeah, no, we do not. It's really important, like I said at the start, you need to opt in. It is an actual action that the student has to take. I also remember working with one student when I was a high school counselor who was invited for a wait list at, I want to say Carnegie Mellon. Maybe we shouldn't name names. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. But they were like, you have 7 days to do this. And if you don't, then, sorry. You're not going to be part of our, I don't know, short list, wait list. I'm sure it's changed, but the student didn't do it and then try to beg his way back onto the wait list. And they were like, yeah, so you can join now the regular wait list, which I don't think was as successful. So speed can be of the essence, I have learned as a high school counselor. So they should jump on that wait list offer right away if they're very sure. They can always withdraw once they're on the wait list if they've moved on.
Yeah. It's funny now, I didn't mind the wait list when I worked for a school that utilized the wait list. I despise the wait list now that colleges have working for a school that's not currently utilizing a waitlist because, you know, summer melt is real and we end up losing students. Thanks, Yvonne, University of Washington, take some of ours, where they're getting off the wait list. And a lot of times that is well after May 1. So here we think we're sitting all well with our enrollment, and then several schools go to their wait list heavily, and then we start losing students who those students are going to go there, probably not get any aid, but that was maybe their dream school they wanted to go to. And so it's kind of funny now, whereas I was like, oh, this isn't a big deal. And now working at Willamette, I'm just sometimes get a little annoyed by them. All right, so we
we
go
should
ahead,
move
Yvonne.
on, but I just want to add, I think I got a little confused. I think when I was at USC, they didn't have a wait list for that reason. They had a lot of integrity. They were like, it's just awful what it does to the students not knowing. And so they were very clear, like, you're either being offered or you're not. But they had other tools, which we'll talk about later, that did the same thing. So let's move on. Let's talk about defer, which Allie and her background can lend much more insight into.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about defer, and this is different than deferring enrollment. So it's different than a student saying, no, I want to defer for a year. This is actually getting the admission decision from a college saying you've been deferred or defer. And that essentially means that they reviewed your application, the admissions office did, and they've decided to hold off on giving you a decision. They're going to defer that decision. And typically why colleges do this is they want to see what applications are coming in for regular decisions. So this would be most common with colleges that have some sort of early action or early decision. The student applied early and then they didn't get a deny, they didn't get an admit, they get a defer saying, we're going to review your application later on with the rest of our applications during the regular round. The reasons for that is oftentimes you don't know what applications you are going to get in regular decision. Generally, we know that schools that do an early and then especially early action and then a regular decision, the stronger applicants tend to apply earlier. And so if we're comparing you against some of our regular decision applicants, it may actually be a good thing because it may not be as strong of a pool. However, there could be an off year. Like I said, I remember one year I was at TCU, our football team was doing amazing, and we had this huge surge in applications after December when, you know, you have like the national championship games and all that. There was a huge surge. And so here we thought we were going into deferring kids that we honestly thought we were going to have room to admit in the regular round, and realized actually we don't have room because kids are already that have been admitted are accepting their enrollment. They're already depositing. And so we can hardly admit anyone in regular to begin with. And so sometimes it doesn't work in a student's favor to be deferred. That would be an example of it. However, then there's other years where you do get into regular and there wasn't that surge in applications, and the applications during regular were not as strong as the early round kids. And so those students that applied early are looking really good compared to those regular applicants. So it does vary a little bit year by year when it comes to that. But that's really why colleges do utilize the defer. At Willamette, we don't utilize defer. We utilize something else that we'll talk about next. But I do think it's important to know that defer is a tool to balance the school's acceptance rate. I hate acceptance rates because I know how often students and parents and even counselors can look at an acceptance rate and think that is telling them how prestigious the school is or how academically prepared the student will be. If they have a lower acceptance rate, then that equals a better college. And I hope we all know that that is not true at all. It's literally a numbers game, an acceptance rate is. So I think knowing though that the business side of college admissions is we know that people look at it. And so defer is a way of managing that acceptance rate and saying, we're going to hold off. We don't know if we need to admit more students, so we're going to hold off and give you a decision later on. Now, the one thing I do like about defer is it's a waiting game, but it's less of a waiting game. It's not like Waitlists where you could just be waiting until July, find out if you get off the wait list or not. A defer, you're generally going to get a final decision with that regular pool. So you'll probably get a deny or an admit, but you know that there's going to be some concrete decision that you're given. And so that's the one thing I like about deferring, is it just helps students release that school if they need to. Yvonne, what do you have to add about defer? Do you have experience with colleges that you've worked at that have done defer?
No, I think so USC went to early action after I left, and I think then they had to use defer as a tool. But from my conversations with other colleagues at institutions that started using those early admission plans for a lot longer than USC, was that it helped because it helped actually control their reading pace. So something I know high school counselors don't think about, but when you have late deadlines, like traditionally they used to be like after January that seniors would submit their application. And then admissions counselors had this like intense, incredible pace of only couple short months where they had to review all these applications and then, hand out decisions. I think colleges that started to get increased volume was like, oh my gosh, we can't manage this. So they try to spread it out. They try to spread out these applications that they had to review through over more months, right? In the hopes of managing that flow for their staff. But now I think a lot of students are under the impression if they apply early, they increase their chances of being offered by that institution. So I think now you get this flood too of applications very early on in the senior year. And then again, I don't think it's a capacity issue. I think a lot of staff are hard pressed to make a lot of decisions that early. So I think defer allows them to really just kind of pick the students who probably would have been offered anyway through a regular decision program. They're really strong. They just like jump off the page in their application. They're bringing a lot of strengths and talents, and they meet the school profile in abundance. And so you're like, yeah, that's great. Let's offer them. We really would, wish to yield them. And then for the students who are kind of just in the middle, defer is this great way of like, okay, when I have a little more time and get a second or third read into these applications, then I can think more critically or thoughtfully about their what they've submitted. So I think defer is a nice tool for admissions officers who want that extra time to parse out what they're reading.
That's a really good point. I absolutely agree. I think one of the things with defer is just like Waitlists, it's super important to follow the institution's instructions because every college can utilize a defer differently. And sometimes they do want additional information and they may tell you that. Sometimes they don't tell you exactly what they want from you, but they say they'll accept new information. So new information means maybe it's a mid-year transcript, maybe it's an additional letter of recommendation, maybe it's an additional honor for an award they've received. Sometimes it may be an admissions interview. They want to get to know you better. They have some questions from reading your application, but definitely follow those instructions. If they tell you, please do not send any additional documents. It will not be looked at. Do not. Depending upon the admission counselor that starts getting all those documents, it could really irritate them that you're not following directions. So I would say just follow the directions. And if it's vague and says additional materials will be accepted, you can, counsel the student to what maybe you think they need. If you know that the school didn't get a mid-year transcript, then send one, especially if they're doing well. That would be smart. If you know that something substantial happened in their life, maybe there was a barrier or a challenge that they just faced that you want to send that college, that could be something else you take into account. And if admission interviews are available, I would highly encourage them to do so. I would say, though, it is not super common for colleges. I feel like once you get a deferred decision, you know, they're not as common to have admissions interviews at that time, but it could be an option to look into. I always found that defers when I worked at TCU were really students who were on the bubble. They were students that were just borderline like, oh, like I really want to admit them, but we need to control our admit rate. We don't want to over-enroll, so we're going to defer them. We did not utilize it as like a soft deny tool at all. It was a really positive thing to say, you know what, we're still super interested in you, and we're going to hold off on making that decision. But the years where we didn't get to admit a lot of defers were particularly hard because they were students that I was excited about and felt like genuinely were really well prepared for that institution. So let's move into the concept of hold, because it is similar to defers. It's just not utilized as often from my perspective. So we'll get the slide deck switched to hold. Okay, so hold is something that some counselors may not be as aware of, but it can be very similar to a defer. It's just a different word and has a little bit different of a strategy behind it for a college. It really is an alternative to giving a defer decision. So I don't think you're really ever going to find colleges that do defer and hold, because that would get really confusing. And honestly, I hadn't worked at a school that used hold until I came to Willamette about 2.5 years ago. And so that was kind of a new concept to me. And at first I was like, well, why aren't we just using the word defer? And the more that I started working at Willamette, I really realized the benefits, not just for the institution, but for the student as well, of a hold. Because a hold, I mean, it's a little more clear, like we're going to hold on to your application. We haven't made a decision yet on it. I think there's also more transparency around why the student is on hold. So an example at Willamette is if a student is on hold, we tell them exactly why they're on hold and what we need from them. It is spelled out very clearly. And those options could be they're on hold because we want to see their grades from their first trimester of high school. We didn't have those when we were reviewing. Maybe there was a little bit of a downward trend at the end of junior year, but that wasn't normal for them. And so we want to see, hey, did they bump it up in senior year? Maybe their senior year is when they're taking their most rigorous courses and they hadn't taken those AP or IB or Running Start or any of those other kind of advanced classes, and their senior year is the first time they're taking it. And so we're like, oh, we want to hold and wait to see how they are doing in those classes. Another reason we could hold a student is because their writing sample they submitted, we didn't feel like was their best work and wasn't reflective of them. Maybe they're an A student in English and the writing sample we got would not lead us to believe that that was A quality writing. So we may ask for that. And then another thing we may hold for is an admissions interview. Maybe there's questions we have about their application. Maybe they had something big go on in their life that was vaguely mentioned in their application. And so we see that there was a downward part in their grades in high school, but the counselor just kind of vaguely mentioned it and the student didn't mention it all in their application. And we're still excited about the applicant, but we're a little concerned. And so we want to actually talk face-to-face with that student. So that could be in person, or most of these are on Zoom since a lot of our students come from out of the area. And we just want to ask those pointed questions. And so those admissions interviews are a lot more, we have, you know, our agenda of things we're going to ask about. It's less of this vague, fluffy admissions interviews. It's a little more direct. So we can get to those questions that we have. But those would be some of the reasons that we would hold a student. Now, holding a student is less about balancing the admit pool, because when you're holding a student, that concept, it is a positive thing. It is saying, we are really interested in you. There was something about your application we really liked, and we need to see these additional things. And seeing these additional things, if we can check off that, yep, that's what we wanted to see, then we are going to be happy to admit you. And that's why I like hold, is because it truly is, it is more of a positive, transparent spin on things. But I also understand why a lot of colleges don't use hold. And that's because they want to use defer or waitlist as a way to balance out their applicant pool and not over enroll. And, you know, Willamette, we are really lucky that we don't have to deal with that right now, and that we are able to truly bring in students we're excited about. And so that admit pool, well, you know, we just take it into account. We aren't getting the, you know, 50,000 plus applications like some other colleges are getting that have to be a little more aware of that. Yvonne, what's your experience with hold?
I have no experience with hold, but I have to say I love it. I think we should try to advocate and promote its use, because I think it's much more student-centered and transparent and fair to them. But Allie, I am looking at the time and I'm like, oh, we have 2 more topics, bonus topics, got to throw them out there. So I want to move on.
Go for it.
Okay. So I think, Allie, it is a great tool, and I'm going to talk about it at the institution I'm at. But anyway, so Spring Emit. I have the benefit of working previously at USC that actually did offer spring admission. Why do colleges and universities offer it? Because our current students, they go on leave, they study abroad, they decide to work, whatever. They do different things, and then their beds go empty in their dorms. And, and so we like to fill them. It brings revenue into the institution. So knowing that we're going to have a good sizable number of students who leave, we want to fill those beds. Spring admission at USC was not something you could request or apply into. You simply were offered. I actually really love the Spring Emit tool because I knew there were so many students that that I fell in love with through their application and really wanted to see them come to USC. And Spring gave me that extra allotment, I guess. It was also a good way, but at the time that when I was there, a lot of parents and students still weren't keen on it. They felt like, well, I could go to a really reputable, other 4-year college starting in the fall and bond with my class right away. So why would I want to come in the spring and start? So I knew I had to save those spots kind of like for the students who I knew really, really, really highly wanted to come to USC, who demonstrated a lot of interest either through conversations with me or on the road or whatever, or it was just obvious in their application. So, but I think now these days, more students are open to taking a break, traveling, and then starting school in the spring, and it's not really as big a deal. So how they use spring might be very different now. At the University of Washington, we don't have spring, but we do allow students to apply to start winter quarter, which is essentially a spring admit. So they can apply to start college winter after the January after they graduate high school, which we call winter quarter. It's a far fewer number. A lot of people are under the impression maybe it's less competitive. It is not, because we don't need that many students to come and start winter quarter. We also don't recommend it because we don't offer as many sessions of student supports and advising. So the transition is going to be kind of a little quicker. It's probably most advantageous to students already in the area, in the Washington area, so that they can move into dorms really quickly. It also does not allow students to enter some of our direct major admission programs like computer science, engineering, or any of the others. So it's not for everyone. And I really discourage students to apply for winter for all those reasons, that it might, it's not going to be supportive. It's not easier. You don't get direct admission to some of those very popular majors. But for the student who maybe, had a not so hot junior year, like you saw a slight downward trend, senior year, they bounced back, they found their groove, and maybe they're going to take a few more classes in community college in the summer, winter, and they're not interested in computer science and engineering or business or anything like that. And then winter quarter might be this great opportunity for them to kind of like show that they are they're on an upward trend, and they're as competitive as they were looking in ninth and 10th grade. Um, and so winter quarter might be a good way for them then to like to come to the University of Washington. They won't be that far behind, and they can kind of continue on with their cohort from high school. Okay, so hopefully I covered that. And that you have to apply to. That winter quarter start is something you actually have to apply to. It's not offered to you. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Appeals. I was asked this great question by Allie even before this webinar began, which is like, does it work? Do I actually know of students who appealed and have gotten into their institution? And yes, I do. So appeals depends on the institution. Some institutions are outright like, no, we don't want it. Don't give it to us. Don't even bother. And then other institutions are like, yes, you're allowed to, and here's a process. So I wish there was quick and dirty rule for you all to follow, but there isn't. You just got to go to the institution and see what they say. What do they want also varies. They might want maybe, the final high school transcript, maybe not. Maybe they want a letter and they want a personal statement, maybe not. Maybe you could submit an extra letter of recommendation, maybe not. So no quick and dirty rule for you to follow. You just have to do what the institution says and see what they want. Usually you should do it fairly quickly. Definitely around the end of the school year, you should submit one in. And why do institutions take appeals? So many reasons. One, there could be a genuine mistake. I know, amazing. We're human. There could have been something that got misentered in an application, or, something didn't get in on time and we didn't like consider it during that process. And an appeal can help highlight that. Appeals also can tell us about events that unfolded in the student's life very late in the application process. Like maybe it was just beginning when the application was due, and nobody understood the severity or the impact of it until after the application was submitted. So that is another reason why appeals can be helpful to the student. Also, life is so unpredictable these days, and sometimes very, significant impact events impact a student's life that we really need to take into consideration. For us at the University of Washington, sometimes students are diagnosed late in high school with a very serious illness, or their family members are, and maybe they need to stick closer to home, or maybe they need to come to Seattle to receive their treatments. For different reasons that we find very significant, we may want to take that into consideration in our reevaluation of their files. So, so appeals can work. So what does that mean? No, we don't want you to encourage every student who didn't get the admissions decision they want, whether it's the major they were admitted to or the actual admissions decision, to appeal. There is no way we can manage that capacity. And I want to say, like, a good 90% of the cases, that's not going to be successful. We do not need to know that their GPA crept up 0.01 percentage points or even 1 percentage point. We do not need to know that they received a host of awards. At the end of senior year, they won, this award and that award from their school or for other places. We do not need to know that they were national merit finalists. Although some schools might take that into consideration, especially if they have match and they can list that institution as their first choice. So it's going to vary. But I would say, as a counselors, that if you have a student who you believe really, really needs to be at a particular institution for reasons other than it soothes their ego, their parents really want it, and they have like no other college choices, which we all know is just not true. Every student always has a college choice if that's what they want. Like if there's a significant reason that you think they really will be best served at that institution, then I have always found it helpful to hear from the counselor in that case to support their appeal. So we want to hear from the student, and it would be helpful to hear from the counselor. And then that I find oftentimes could help us to take extra, well, it will allow us to give extra consideration for that student in that appeal process. Okay, Allie, I just unloaded a mouthful. Do you have more to add?
I love that. I would say what's interesting about appeals, all the institutions I've worked at have utilized appeals in some capacity. But the one thing that was kind of consistent was that we didn't really like it when people submitted appeals because the tone it was sending to the college, and I can see there's lots of ways you could perceive this, but the tone it was sending was that student or parents felt like there was a mistake with their application, that we made an error and we didn't look at something or consider something accurately. And so the tone it's sending is, hey, you did something wrong. And no one likes to be questioned, right, that they did something wrong. And so I would say my experience is it has been extremely rare to see appeals go through to reverse an admissions decision. I have seen it done. I can think of one case in particular where there legitimately was some sort of error. But other than that, like it is what message, what tone is that college being sent by a student submitting an appeal? And that's why I think really, really helping families understand that, and that especially if you're sending an appeal in spring and the colleges and feel like their enrollment is going to be up, they are yielding students at a higher rate than usual, they're not going to be looking at appeals very heavily because they do not want to over enroll. Now a college, maybe that they are having a little bit of an off year and are hoping to, make sure that they enroll their goal number of students, maybe that college would have a little bit more leniency with admitting that student. But again, you don't really know that. The college is still trying to work that out. They're not even being transparent about where they are with filling their class yet. So I'd just say be really careful about utilizing appeals.
Yeah, no, Allie, you make a good point. The tone is everything, right? Like, even though we did say like, hey, we do know of cases where our directors wanted to do right by the kid. If we make a mistake, I think most offices are like, we're going to fix this. But that doesn't mean we want you to come at us and saying, look what you did wrong. You failed to consider my gold award in my scholastic art competition and this or that. And no, that's not going to help you. But even just writing a very gentle letter like, hey, I was really disappointed. I really thought I would be a great fit. And, if you add all your updates, it's fine. And if I think by chance there was some error, then we will do right by you. But the majority of those cases, there was no error. And even the the 1 or 2 or 3 additional awards they've won or recognitions or their increased GPA or anything. In most cases, like a lot of that was already factored into the initial review, and that's not going to tip the scale at all. And it just slows us down, to be honest. And I will have to say, like, that is the part that I know these students do it without your consent or your knowledge a lot of times, but these students will like write these lengthy, like continued interest emails, like appeal emails, and it's so hard because it's just like, I think at most institutions we respond to every single one, and it just slows down the whole process, and sometimes it doesn't allow us to do the job that we really need to do because, like I said, a lot of times an extra letter will not help, an extra award will not help, and in the great majority of the cases, you should be telling them appeals will likely be very unsuccessful. But
So we move into questions.
yeah,
Anyone
there are always
have any-
exceptions.
We actually don't have,
Any questions people are dying to ask?
yeah, we don't have any in the chat yet, but that doesn't mean that there aren't any coming.
We either answered all of them
Right.
or we bored you to death.
No. Speaking for myself, I don't have any questions because I think you covered everything for me so well. But yes, somebody else said super helpful. So thanks, Juliana. Yeah, I was furiously taking notes off screen. So thank you guys. Awesome. Yeah, maybe we'll just give it another minute to see if there are any questions that come in. I think some folks have been logging off, so must mean that they have everything they need. Yeah. Thanks everyone too for your patience while we worked, me and Martha worked on the tech issue. Appreciate that, especially Yvonne.
Okay.
And
No,
Thank
Allie.
you for inviting us, Ray and Brittany, to talk about this. This has been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's any questions coming in. Yeah, you guys did such a great job. Everybody's saying that they really appreciated it and thought it was really helpful. So, and I know that many others will be watching this. They won't be able to see the chat, but they'll be able to log in and watch the presentation. So the recorded one. Yeah, appreciate you guys. Gosh, thank you so much. Everybody have a great day. Anybody that's left, have a great day. And Allie, I hope you're able to leave your home at some point. Hope the snow doesn't keep you there for a few days. And good luck at your event. All right,
Thank you.
everyone, take care. Bye.